episode, I talk horror with my fellow horseman of the podcast Apocalypse, Mike Scondotto. Mike is one of the co-hosts of the great Necromaniacs podcast. Mike also fronts the bands The Last Stand and Inhuman. I had a killer time talking with Mike, and I hope you enjoy. After you're done with this episode, make sure you check out my fellow horseman of the podcast Apocalypse, Everything Went Black podcast, Into the Necrosphere, the Necromaniacs podcast, Iblis Manifestations, and the Soul Knox podcast. Also, don't forget to check me out on social media. Facebook is HorrorWolf666, Twitter is HorrorWolf666, and I believe Instagram is BrandonLegion666. So once again, thanks for listening, and I hope you dig this one. All right, Mike. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Brandon, man. This is cool. I've been listening to you for a while, and it's great that both of our podcasts kind of support each other. So yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic, man. And Necromaniacs has been a big inspiration to me even before I really got into the podcast game. You know what I mean? Like just having y'all with all the positive support and the cool episodes and everything you do, it's pretty badass, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's I feel like that almost 9 years we've been on have gone by so fast, I think it's 9 years in February of 2023 that Mike and I have been doing Necromaniacs podcast. So yeah, it started out as just kind of like a lark, we went and saw a Serbian film in this theater in this very urban area, but kind of like a neighborhood that normally wouldn't play a movie like that. Mm-hmm. And we're like, oh, we have to see it at the Alpine. The Alpine's in Bay Ridge, which is, I live right near there now. And back then I was living in the neighborhood back then. Mm-hmm. Moved a few times in between, but yeah, it just kind of went from there, So, we saw that movie, and then Mike did his very first Everything Went Black after we watched that movie. And then I think just not really too long after Mike started Everything Went Black, Mike Hill, that is, for those who may not know what I'm talking about. We just were like, let's do something that's just for movies, just for horror movies, because we both love horror movies and like talking about them and shit. And at this point, I had a comic book store with my brother, and Mike was there all the time, hanging out. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of grew organically from there. And yeah, it's a cool story, I think.
It is. And the cool thing I like about Necromaniacs is there's no bullshit. It's just these are your opinions. There's not you're not being paid to say this, because there are some podcasts I've come in contact with or listened to over years, they seem a little kind of put on, you know what I mean? And that really throws me off. I want to know your honest opinion on shit, and that's the cool thing about y'all. It's your fucking honest opinion, and it's pretty dead on.
It's funny. I mean, yeah, Necromaniacs is not monetized, and it doesn't have any sponsors, and we don't have anybody sending us free Blu-rays or links to movies or anything like that. It's just all 100% what we think. I mean, and we're not film students or anything like that, and we're just fans. But I guess maybe the one angle that Mike and I have is perhaps our age, Gen Xers and guys who came up in the 80s, horror boom, really, that's my childhood, basically, and into early teen years. So, I mean, again, when it comes to other horror podcasts, I don't know if anybody's doing exactly what we do. I mean, maybe there is, but all the random ones I've checked out over the years seem to be quite different from what Mike and I do. So, I mean, I guess that's a feather in our cap.
Yeah, totally. I think y'all definitely have something unique going on, because only other horror podcast I follow, religiously or whatever, is Postmortem with Mick Garris, because he's the fucking master of horror, man. He's so informative. Faculty of Horror is another good one with Andrea and Alex, and they're fucking awesome. If you haven't never checked out the Faculty of Horror, you definitely should. And the last one is Colors of the Dark podcast. Like those are like my horror podcasts, besides Necromaniacs and stuff. But those are
Yeah,
like the most solid ones.
Postmortem is really good. I just listened to it the other day with Eli Roth, and I've been really digging the Charles Band podcast, the guy from Full Moon. It's a lot of fun. It's so funny. Like early on when he was doing his episodes, I mean, he only started doing them in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Like he did this thing where he talked about himself a lot, and I just got like such a kick out of it because he would interrupt guests to talk about himself. But like I feel like he doesn't do that anymore. Like he's completely eased into the role of being a podcast host. And it's just, I don't know, it's gotten like significantly better, I think. I feel like maybe somebody put a little bug in his ear and to say, let the guest talk and talk less about yourself. And the show is actually quite funny and quite great.
He's a hell of a character. I mean, Full Moon films in general, are fucking outrageous. And like part of my 90s childhood, Full
Yeah.
Moon was always there with like some weird shit. But, and he's the guy behind it. So, he's got to be kind of out there,
Yeah, Charles Band's Full Moon Freak Show. It's just I like that he's had, some really heavy hitters on there. Like I really enjoyed the interview with Will Lustig. Always learning about like, 70s, 80s New York scene, and that's just kind of, in my wheelhouse and the shit that I want to hear. I mean, the thought of like, somebody just rambling on about Scream 47 just doesn't really appeal to me, So
yeah.
it's just, I guess it's all personal taste.
Yeah, that's definitely a podcast I want to check out. I gotta make room for it because, following the Horseman of the podcast Apocalypse, I have, there's a good bit of podcasts there to follow. Plus, I try to squeeze in an audiobook here and there. Like right now, I'm going through Krampus by Brahm. That's the audiobook I'm on right now, and it is fucking killer. It's one of the best Krampus stories I've ever heard. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one or not.
Oh no, I'm not. It sounds really cool. I just ordered a bunch of Brian Keene books on Black Friday that have not arrived yet, unfortunately. Taking a little while there, so I think they're coming this week. So he's the guy that like is literally my favorite horror writer of the last 5 years, potentially of all time, honestly. And he has so much stuff that, like, I mean, I've read a lot of it, and a lot of it is sitting, in my view right now. But there's still some stuff I have not checked out. So, I'm always kind of catching up with that. And I've kind of made it a point over this holiday break I have coming up. I have like literally almost 14 days off after Tuesday to read. So, hopefully that is what I'll do. I've been reading. Rereading Neil Gaiman's Sandman in trade paperback, which is always fucking great, and have Alan Moore's Providence in trade paperback, which is a bonkers like Lovecraft horror, cosmic horror, story that I would really recommend. Yeah, it's called Providence.
Okay.
Gonna read that. I had the individual issues, but I don't think I ever finished it. And I got this whole nice trade from Amazon. So yeah. I want to do some more reading again. I feel like it's been a minute.
Yeah, and I love reading as well. I do audiobooks, and I also, actually read. I use what I mostly use is my Kindle for reading, just because low light in our house and stuff. Our light sucks, so having the Kindle there is like I can read anywhere. It doesn't matter what the light is, and it's like one of those big like 10-inch ones, or it's like the big ass Kindle. So it's like almost like reading a comic. It's comic size, or novel size, and this makes it that much easier. I still collect the physical media when it comes to books, but I end up reading it on the Kindle and just having the book like on my shelf somewhere.
No, that's really cool. I have a good chunk of Keen stuff and Jack Ketchum stuff on Kindle, so I kind of mix it up, But I do love books. Books just take up space, and sometimes you don't have the space. So.
Yeah, we're starting to run out of space for sure in our townhouse, man. We got a whole wall downstairs that has mostly first edition Stephen King hardcovers and a whole shit ton like first edition Anne Rice stuff, Like the whole damn wall is full of that stuff. Dude, it's crazy.
Oh, very cool, man. And
Yeah.
it's funny, I think books really play into my horror story, honestly. Whereas initially it was movies. It was kind of seeing movies on TV really as a kid.
Mhm.
Like they would basically have local TV stations in the early 80s that would edit the R-rated horror films and put them on TV.
Hmm.
And initially it was the kind of thing that like I was afraid of, and like my older brothers would tease me over and force me to watch it. And then, after finally kind of hunkering down and watching it, and it was literally a Friday the 13th Part One aired on syndication that really kind of made me turn the corner.
Hmm.
Uh, and when I wasn't afraid of horror movies anymore, as like I guess an 11-year-old or 12, maybe 11. Um, but books were right behind that, and things like Stephen King and actually Clive Barker books early in high school. And um, it's funny, I remember taking out an H.P. Lovecraft book at freshman or sophomore year, and I
Hmm.
got to be honest, those books are not for freshmen and sophomores. H.P. Lovecraft books.
Definitely not.
And I just was like I saw the cover and I knew, unfortunately, that doorbell's going to ring and it's not for me because these people at Christmas time ring every single bell in the building just to get into the building. I don't know if you heard that, but
No.
yeah, like like I would look at the book covers and it looked really cool, but within about like 5 minutes of reading it or 10 minutes of reading it, I'd be like, wait, this is English, but what is he saying? Like I literally remember completely being just, yeah, I don't know if I could read this H.P. Lovecraft stuff. I mean, it seems cool, but I couldn't get into it. Like the old, older early 1900s dialogue. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
And just like just the formula of it and whatever. But obviously later in life, I went back to it and I quote unquote got it. But it was really Clive Barker and Stephen King that kind of started me on the journey. And then later on discovering more, lesser known people. But yeah, I mean, pre-internet and just what I had access to in my high school library. They had decent amount of horror books in my high school library, so that was cool.
I think like the first like horror book that really got me going when I was in probably elementary school at the time was Scary Stories. I think it was a
Yeah,
scary
yeah.
yeah, remember that whole like series? They got banned in a bunch of schools because of the artwork and all and how violent some of the stories were, but that's really what pushed me ahead. Like this I was like so fucking cool.
See, I mean, I know you're younger than me, so that's actually a very cool starting point for you.
Hmm.
Um, because I know later on that was adapted into a film. But yeah, I've definitely heard that had a tremendous impact on younger horror kids. I mean, I'm 49. I was born in 73, so I went to high school from 87 to 91. And you know, it's funny. I think that period is the end of the boom of horror for film, actually,
Hmm.
because by 90 and 91, it was kind of done for a little while. You had like Silence of the Lambs was a huge deal in 1991, but no
Yeah,
one was calling that a horror movie. And although it really was a horror movie, and the
totally.
book was, suspense or whatever, psychological thriller and blah, blah, blah. Like it was just like this really strange time, especially in the wake of Silence of the Lambs. It almost killed horror, like especially it winning the Academy Award and selling so many books. It was like nobody wanted to use that dirty word horror, but in reality, it was largely to me a horror film.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. People argue with you all day like, oh no, Silence of the Lambs ain't a horror film. Like it totally is a horror film. Yes, it's also a thriller, but it's also a fucking horror film.
Yeah, like things can be more than one thing, you know.
Yep.
um, it's like when you talk about giallo films, there are giallo films that are not even all entirely thrillers because some people refer to Suspiria as Giallo, even though it's not a thriller, it's supernatural. It's you can kind of go on and very into the weeds with it, but um there are other examples too. But yeah, it was kind of a cool time. It was like the end of a great boom, and I remember in like 1990 going to see like Predator 2 in the theater, and
Hmm.
like the later era Halloween sequels in the theater. And it was almost like, now thinking about it, it was like you're at the last hours of a party, because shit has got to get real bleak for a while with a few bright spots. And this literally lasts until, to me, beginning of the 2000s.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think for me, like, the early 2000s was like that same time period from the 80s into like 1990, like the like
Mm.
fucking horrible horror shit that was coming out. Like it was the time of Scream during the early 2000s, and I'm not the biggest Scream fan. I'm not a fan of those like teenager type movies, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, all that stuff. I couldn't stand it when they came out. I was like, what the hell is this? And it stayed like that for a while until then the whole like torture porn stuff started to come out. Which is a horrible word for it. People use torture porn, but like Hostel and all that stuff, it started breaking the mold a little bit, which was good.
Yeah, no, we needed those movies to come into fashion, and we needed those movies to like do well, because from 95, say, to 2000, it was all Screams. I Know You Did Last Summers, and just shitty teen stuff. And thank God, to me, for Saw, for Eli Roth, for a bunch of those movies. And then what was right post that was the French explosion. Thank God all that happened. That like kind of had to happen, I feel like, because horror was just in a very strange place. Although some people really enjoyed those movies, and those movies made money, those
Hmm.
the teen centric horror films. I saw a bunch of them in theater, but to me they were just forgettable. They were just, I thought about them right then and there, and then when it was done, I never thought about them again. Like I saw a bunch of those in the theater just to go on, dates and whatnot, and um, it was because that was the only horror to see in the theater for a while, bro, and it was just a weird time. And honestly, I know some people have not looked back fondly on some of the, Eli Roth stuff and whatnot, but I do, because I think without that, you wouldn't have some of the really fucking great shit that's happening now.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I'm all for Eli Roth. I mean, he doesn't throw out all like fucking perfect films or whatever, but like what he does for the horror community as a whole and like getting it out there, like getting the word out there and everything like that, like he's done fucking great. Like I say, he was just on that post mortem recently. That was a great
Yeah.
interview, and like he's out there spreading the good word.
Yeah, I mean, I know his next movie is not a horror movie, but I'm glad he's directing movies, and I know he will make horror again. I have a funny feeling he will, and hopefully it'll be fucking awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, like when it comes to say the Saw franchise, I think I really enjoyed the first three, or
Hmm.
perhaps four. I saw all those in the theater. And then after that, I tapped out. I'm several movies behind in that franchise, but I enjoyed them as they were happening, and it was good for that to happen, to kind of wipe out all that teen stuff. And it was the antithesis to a lot of the teen stuff, which was great.
Oh yeah, totally. With the Saw stuff, man. The first time I seen Saw one, it was on Halloween. We went to the movie theaters, we're all dressed up and stuff, and that one just blew me away because it felt so dangerous compared to what's been coming out before. Then like, oh, you don't know what the hell's about to happen. It's like it's all as wild. Like the visuals are wild, like the green tint, to everything just felt real dangerous about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like every generation, or every decade or so, uh, someone finds horror in a different way, and how you and your friends found horror, and how my friends and I found horror. And it's kind of, I wonder today what a very young kid, I imagine is literally all based on internet kind of, you know, chatter, right? Or like, I mean, I'm sure some of it's obviously word of mouth, but I feel like it's its own. It kind of grows its own way organically for each generation, you know.
Right.
And things like, I know kids, TikTok, and TikTok is incorporated to horror. Like, I don't use TikTok. I don't even use. I literally deleted Twitter months before the Musk thing, just because I was like, I don't use it and I don't like it. I'm on Instagram, of course, and I'm on Facebook, but to me, that's enough. But like I think about like my nephews, and I have like a 13 and a 15-year-old nephew, and I wonder if they became kind of like super into horror, like what their kind of journey would be like in this modern age,
Yeah, that's something to think about for sure. Like how are they getting like access to like their first horror movies, and what is their first horror movie? What's motivating them to watch more horror? Like it could be like TikTok, or which I don't have a TikTok either. I'm good with all that shit. But like what the
Right.
hell's getting them going with stuff?
Yeah. I mean, it's I'm just happy that horror, I believe, is in a very good place, and I don't see any kind of big drastic dip anytime soon, like we saw in the 90s, and um I also feel like the box office numbers are just too strong to deny for that to almost maybe never happen again.
Hmm.
You have movies that cost pennies, making millions and millions of dollars, like Terrifier 2. No Hollywood exec is immune to that. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
But
I have a funny feeling we might see 2023 perhaps an even bigger year than what this very wild 2022 was, historic 2022. What do you think?
yeah, totally. And the reason for this boom, I think it is people need to fucking escape because you have all the real horror in real life, like all this crazy shit that's going on. Like we need an escape. We need something that, we need some fantasy that scares us. We don't need reality to scare us. So I think that's why people are turning more to like horror films and all now.
That's very possible. Like, I almost feel like in some ways it is bigger than the 80s. I mean, in the 80s, I go to the conventions a lot. There were horror cons in the 80s, but they were sparsely attended. And there was like one in your city, where I am now. I live in Brooklyn, close to Jersey, and there's literally like 7 or 8 a year in the state of New Jersey, horror
Yeah.
conventions. And that is insane. And they all do well, and people go to them. And right now, look, I think we're in a recession. That's for another conversation and another podcast. I think we're literally in a recession already. However,
Right.
it it has not, to me, hit the pocket of the horror world, because I feel like people still want to be involved. People still want to spend their money. They love it. Like, they look forward to it. They will put other shit aside so that they have money for the horror con, which is, I feel like I see it.
Hmm.
And that is amazing. And all the movies that have come out in 2022, there's just so many. I mean, Necromaniacs, we have our year-end wrap-up coming out uh, this week. Well, I'm not sure exactly when this will air, this particular conversation, but it's airing on the 22nd or the 23rd of December.
Hmm.
And honestly, I was kind of racking my brain because there was that much to choose from. And
Yeah,
I
there's
do think
super
next
abundance
year
of films.
follow suit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my top 10 in January, like the first week of January, because right now I'm still watching films that came out this year that I haven't got to check out yet. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's a tough one, I gotta say. Like it's gonna be tough. So I'm waiting to the very last minute because I just watched a film last night that's probably gonna make my list. It's Satan's Slaves 2,
Yeah,
Communion.
yeah. Mike Hill loved it. I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen its prior film. But literally, the night after we taped our best of the year, I watched a movie that Mike had on his list that I did not, and I will not say what it is. And my God, I was like, this literally would have been perhaps a top 3 film for me, and I didn't get to see it. So, you know, you don't even have enough hours in the day for what is happening in horror right now. That's how much there's good films, in my opinion, are out there. I have a buddy who's I consider a horror mentor of mine, my friend Mark, who over 20 years ago really kind of, told me and taught me about a lot of the Italian stuff. I had already been an Argento fan at the time. But he was up on literally every other director, Bava and Fulci and Martino. And I kind of learned all about that stuff from him. But and he's one of the only people I know who has absolutely no desire to dip his toes in the modern horror world. And I'm always telling him, I'm like, there's good stuff out there, man. You got to check it out. And he's like, nah, it probably sucks. And it's just, he makes me laugh, But I appreciate and respect his opinion that he loves his 70s stuff and his 80s stuff and, his late 60s stuff. And that's it, But I credit him with turning me on to a lot of really cool stuff. And I feel like because of him, I have turned a lot of people onto stuff that I feel like they might not have known about. But he's one of the only people I know who is a horror guy, in my opinion, who doesn't really keep up with and doesn't really care for too much of the modern stuff. He'll see maybe something and he'll be like, oh, that was actually pretty good. I'm like, okay, then why don't you watch this and this? And he goes, no, I'm not going to watch those. So,
Wow.
I feel like without him, I don't think I would have the taste that I have, But what separates me from him is the fact that I love modern horror and I love what's going on.
Yeah, I know a few people like that too. Like, oh, nothing's good's come out since the 80s, man. The horror died in the 80s. I'm like, no, that is not true. Have you watched any modern horror? And they'd be like, no, I haven't seen anything. I'm like, how the fuck do you know,
Yeah, there are people like that when it comes to music too. And those people anger me more than the film people who say that, to be honest. Because music is music. Like, you could put a damn song on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it takes longer to plunk it down for a 2-hour film than it does to just hit click, to click the link that a buddy sends you of a song that he says is a good song,
Right.
Or clearly a band that you see is doing well and a bunch of your friends like or whatever, and friends of yours that are metalheads, if you're a metalhead, and you're still going, yeah, man, the last good metal band was Pantera. And it's just like, oh, please just stop talking. It's like, stop,
Yeah. And those guys usually be dressed in like the faded out jeans from the 80s with the white high tops and stuff. Like, oh, you don't listen to anything past 1989,
It is quite hilarious. But yeah, I guess, tying it into music, I mean, when I was really getting into horror, it almost times a bit with finding death metal. It was really more just listening to hardcore first, when I was like really getting into Clive Barker. I had gotten exposed to hardcore music at about 14 and started going to shows at CBGB's at around 14 years old and using my brother's ID that said I was 16 and all that. And, Hellraiser is kind of big at that point. And there's still some cool shit happening. It's 88, 89. But around 90, again, horror, still a big part of my life. I get exposed to death metal. Right. And I hearing Obituary, honestly, and seeing them live for the first time, kind of by chance, because they were playing with Sacred Reich, and I was a fan of Sacred Reich. Me and my hardcore buddies went to see Sacred Reich, actually, at this show at Lemoore in Brooklyn. But another friend of mine was like, you got to see Obituary. He was opening for them. He goes, you got to check them out. You got to check them out. And he was right, and they were amazing, and they were actually better than Sacred Reich. This is 1990 cause of death obituary, first
Right.
U.S. obituary. So they're like fucking on fire, you know? And that record in particular, Obituary's Cause of Death, was the first death metal record I bought, you know? I bought it on cassette, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And it just totally struck a chord with me. And kind of from then on in, like the death metal horror connection in my head mentally was there, you know?
Right.
And it's funny because that's, I think of a band like Mortician, who forms right around this time. And I don't hear of until about a year later. I think I heard of Mortician around 91.
Mm-hmm.
And their whole basis is horror movies, you know?
Right.
And it just made perfect fucking sense. And it just was like, I'm like, this is it, man. This is what I want to hear more of. And I didn't abandon hardcore, of course. But I just kind of like the two genres of music simultaneously were just such a huge part of my life, you know? And yeah, it was just wild. Like when you're that age, that's the age records have this kind of everlasting impact on you. You know, I mean, honestly, there are records even today that have an impact on me as a grown ass man.
Right.
But when you're 17 and something hits you like that, you're probably going to be a fan for life. And sure enough, I've been an Obituary fan for life.
Yeah. That's killer, man. Like horror and metal just go together, you know. Like if you're a metalhead and you don't watch horror movies, that's a rarity. I've never met a metalhead that doesn't watch horror movies, and I've never really met a horror person that doesn't listen to some type of metal. It doesn't have to be like the metal I listen to, but they listen to some type of metal. You know what I mean?
It's funny. A guy I know, Sam, is in not really an emo band. He's in a very melodic band, you know, kind of like alternative rock band. And he's not a metalhead, but he's a tremendous horror fan. He doesn't listen to death metal. He doesn't listen to black metal. He was like a metalhead when he was like a young kid. And then he you know, formulated the music that he plays now.
Right.
He is I guess he's one of the few people I know who is a diehard horror guy that is not a part of death, black metal, or hardcore. You know?
Yeah, that's a rarity, man. Like I said, I've met a lot of people, and I've never met somebody like that before.
Yeah. He's aware of all those kinds of music. He's heard all those kinds of music. But to me, he's none of those. You know,
Right.
he's an indie rocker, but he is a super horror guy, and it's to me again, that's the power of horror movies, right? It's like
Totally.
There's a businessman somewhere living in Manhattan who looks like, you know, a super nerd who I assure you is a tremendous fan of fucking Lucio Fulci. It's out there, bro. You know?
Oh yeah. I was I think we were at a Goat Horse show. I think it might have been Goat Horse. This was years ago, when they first started like playing out and stuff. And there was a dude there in a damn suit and tie you'd never think would be there. He's at a fucking Goat Horse show, like fucking moshing and stuff, like pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, back in the 80s, things were very more formulated. Like, you know, if you the word poser, and if you didn't have this look and you didn't have that look, and it was a little more focused on that. And to me, I guess one of the better things about the modern world is that just be your fucking self. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
It's truly, you know, come as you are. You know, I mean, you don't have to have a horror look. You don't have to have, like, you know what I'm saying? That's the beauty of horror. I think it's all a bunch of true misfits, you know, that love this, you know, genre.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny. I brought up Silence of the Lambs earlier and the impact that it had. And I mean, I hope that we're close to perhaps something like that happening again. You know, it's been 31 years, 32 years. That's a long time. And I think it's time for a horror movie to be considered for a fucking Academy Award again. Don't you think?
Totally. No, I think Eggers might be the man for that job, you know. whatever new
So,
thing he comes up with. He's definitely has the criteria that could like,
yeah, yeah,
get it up there.
absolutely. And I'm going to actually backtrack myself a bit. Jordan Peele
Yeah.
has gotten there, but I guess for some people, they may think, well, but his movies are also they're horror, but they're also all five other things, and they're blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, no, I mean, you could say the same thing about Silence of the Lambs, but
Hmm.
the Egger stuff, yes, I think he could be that guy to bring a movie that is even more horrific than, say, your Get Out or your Us or your Nope,
Hmm.
and you know, really fucking bring the box office and like the hype. The thing is, Peele's movies, they make money. You know,
Yeah.
I would gather some of them have made more than, say, your Midsummers and whatnot. I believe they have, honestly.
Right.
And I actually thought Nope was fucking fantastic, and
Me too, dude. Yes.
favorite of his three, honestly.
I'm gonna have to agree with you on that because it was so fucking weird. Like the whole like creature design, like where did that come from? You know what I mean? It was just so strange. It was like I was watching like an Outer Limits episode or something. It was just so fucking out there and strange. And I love that. Then towards the end, when the creature evolved into something else, it's like, God damn, that's creative as fuck.
I I just I just got like Spielberg vibes from that movie. I got Hitchcock, Spielberg, and just like there was just something about the whole aspect with the monkey. I don't know, man. I thought that was fucking brilliant. I
Hmm.
think there was just something really cool there, and those scenes of the monkey,
Oh,
on the TV set. I was just like, whoa, man, this is fucking great. I don't want to spoil Nope for the listeners, but I will say of his three films so far, that's my fucking favorite Jordan Peele movie.
yeah, I'm gonna say that too. I was a big fan of Us. I thought Us was fucking great. Again, super original with the storyline and stuff. And I don't know, this felt like new. You know what I mean? And but I think Nope might take the medal for that just because, like, yeah, the whole like monkey part, like, it's so like brutal too. It's like holy shit. What if that really happened? It's like fuck up.
Like it was like the movie within the movie, the story within the story. Like I don't know, man. That just really did it for me. It gave me Phenomena vibes, like from Argento. Like I just was like, you
Hmm.
know what, man? Jordan Peele knows his fucking shit, and he's fucking great. Like I can't wait to see what his next movie is going to be. Honestly, I hope he doesn't leave the genre anytime soon. Like I hope he does like 10 movies in the horror wheelhouse. Before he makes like a serious drama or something like that. But you know, it's like I feel like there are more Jordan Peele's coming, and I think they're more. I don't know. I think it's knocking on the door of like something even bigger than what has already come. But even if that doesn't happen, honestly,
Hmm.
I will fondly look back on this whole horror era. It's been fucking great. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
man. I mean, it's like
down,
endless gems.
down.
Yeah, I'm glad you're a Jordan Peele fan too, because it gets a lot of hate, and I'm like, I don't see it, man. This dude's doing some cool, different shit. It's not your standard horror movie, and I love that. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people were just a little. They might have found his first film a little polarizing and whatnot, and political and blah blah blah. But again, that's a great fucking movie, Get Out, and I saw that
Yeah.
in the theater. Um, you just have to respect his craft and his filmmaking ability and his storytelling ability at the very least. If you don't like the content, whatever, you don't like the movie, but the talent is there. I mean, it's he's fucking great in my opinion.
And this dude came from Mad TV, which I used to love, man. Mad TV was the fucking best, and he came
Oh,
from that, which is crazy.
background. I know, crazy, so crazy. But like, yeah, I mean, this year for Necromaniacs was a fun year because it was the year that we covered the most movies of that current year ever.
Wow.
We almost could have gone the entire run of the year focusing on 2022 films. Honestly, that's how much was out. But every once in a while, we'd be like, you know what, we want to do an old one. Like, you know, like we were like, yeah, we want to do something from the 70s or something from the 80s, like, or something from Italy, or, you know.
Hmm.
So I think at the very least, for a little chunk of the beginning of 2023, I think we'll shoehorn some of the missed 2022s.
Hmm.
But I would like to go, okay, I want to do 2 or 3 in a row of older obscure movies again, you know, and that's kind of the beauty of the show. There are no rules. There is no formula. We decide upon the film via text message, and that's that.
And that's cool. That's what I love about it, you know. And some of these films I haven't even seen, especially when y'all do some of the older ones, you know, like it could have slipped by me and stuff. And it's cool to go back and check that out.
Yeah, I mean, I want to find even more shit like that, you know. Um, it's just it's hard sometimes to find like a real gem that you like. Oh my god, we think the people who listen to this show are going to be all over this fucking movie. And it was funny, like we had covered Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker
Hmm.
uh, before it hit Shutter, actually, and
Hmm.
before people were kind of talking about that movie, like I saw it and I went, Mike, you got to see this fucking movie. It is insane. It's from the early '80s. It has got your us written all over it. You need to see this movie. And then like weeks later, it hit Shutter, and um, it was on Joe Bob, and it was like, this is hilarious, you know? Like, what are the odds, you know?
And that's not the first time y'all have done that either. Like something shows up on Shutter like right after that, and it usually gets on Joe Bob's show, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, it's pure coincidental, in my opinion. Uh, it's, you know, no one has ever shot us a message saying, "Hey, I work on Joe Bob's show. We love your podcast." That's like never happened.
Uh,
So, you know, um, I just think that people with good taste sometimes, or weird tastes, think there's just like there's something out there in the energy, and you know, it's just coincidence.
yeah, totally. Definitely something out there with the energy when it comes to like the weirdness of horror and stuff and how we're all kind of connected in a weird way, you know?
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, I also like when a listener will send us a message on Instagram or Facebook and say, you know, you guys got to see this movie or check this out. And but to me, the best part is when they send the messages that say, I've never saw that movie and I never even heard of it and wouldn't have without your show. And thank you for fucking exposing me to the movie. And that's the coolest part, you know?
Yeah, that's the best. I'm a fan of getting like positive messages and all too for the podcast. I had a friend of the show and stuff, and a friend of mine. She made the comment that listening to my podcast like eating apple pie is so comforting. I'm like, oh, that's fucking cool. Like I take that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, you do a lot of interviews, and I'm sure that there have been times where an interview, you know, maybe had some bumps in the road, or someone might not have come off the way you wanted them to. But I do feel like probably 9.5 times out of 10, you know, again, the love of horror and that kinship and then that community, um, you know, makes for a very positive experience.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and like I said, there's been a few bumps in the road here with certain people, but nothing bad. You know, I've never really had a bad guest or anything like that. You know, just sometimes somebody's energy might be a little bit low and stuff, so I try to do my best to try to, you know, bring the energy up a little bit. You know, or my energy might be a little low that day. You know, it's just you roll
Right.
with it.
No, totally, totally. I mean, yeah, it's funny. I think it's funny. We had brought Jeff Kashid, our third host,
Mhm.
co-host, along at a time when Mike and I had been really busy and the shows were extremely sporadic, to say the least, you know, like
Mhm.
super sporadic. And it was like, fuck, like there's way too much time in between shows. And then Mike proposed the idea of having a third co-host so that we could always kind of have a gap filled, basically,
Mhm.
where like I could do 1 or 2 in a row, and then I could take a week or two off, and Jeff could do 1 or 2, or quite often it's literally being one on, one off, one on, one off,
Right.
for a while. But then, shit happens. Life happens. Again, this podcast is done. Necromaniacs is done completely free.
Yeah.
It's not monetized. I don't make a cent. It's my time. It's Mike's time. It's Jeff's time. Um, who knows though? Perhaps down the road that could change. But I mean, I almost feel like the listeners might be weirded out by a fucking commercial before our show. 9 years down the line. I mean, I don't know. It's something that's crossed my mind.
Hmm.
But who the fuck knows? I kind of do love the old "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" adage, honestly.
Hmm.
And it's just a part of the show's kind of charm. The fact that it is done for the love of horror movies and the love of just kind of bullshitting with my friend.
Yeah, and it comes out in the podcast too. Like you can feel all that. That's why it's so cool. It's genuine.
Yeah, like Mike can be like the ultimate straight guy because like there have literally been times on the podcast where Mike goes, "Yeah, I don't like comedy. I don't like comedians. I don't like comedic movies." And it's just like you don't hear people say that too often. And I'll laugh. Like I laugh a lot on the podcast. And you may almost never hear Mike laugh on the podcast if you're really paying attention.
Right.
So that's another unique aspect of the show. And Jeff is curmudgeonly quite a bit, and
Yeah.
that's the other aspect of the show. Jeff has become the guy who likes the least of like the movies to a degree, or he'll score things quite low. There's a movie on my top list that I won't spoil that
Hmm.
I think Jeff hated, and it's one of my favorite movies of the year. So it's like that's again part of the charm of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally see those different dynamics there. It's hilarious. So, and it works really well.
Yeah, like I can be the more sarcastic kind of, say weird things kind of out of nowhere guy. And uh, you know, but it's to me that's what makes it cool. And I would never want any of those things to change, you know?
Right. No,
But
totally. The dynamics y'all have, like, is what makes it so damn good. So,
thank you so much. I mean, and I appreciate that. And yeah, it's just weird how it all kind of started. It just kind of started from like a lark, like a funny idea and a fun idea. Um, and yeah, it's funny. Like we made these shirts at one point, right? And we
hmm.
didn't make a lot of them. And at one point we sold a few, and then they sat forever. And then I was like, hey, Mike, we have these shirts just kind of sitting here. And then all of a sudden, boom, we sold like every last one we had. And now ever since, every once in a while, someone will inquire about the shirt. And it's like, we kind of wanted to make those shirts a special one-shot deal. you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, I think I tried to get one of those shirts, and all y'all had what all y'all had left was like a small or some shit. I'm
That's
like, God damn it.
all medium left. It was like, oh, shit. I forget the exact number of the shirts we made. For those who don't know, we made these cool, black one-sided shirts with the Necromaniacs logo. And who knows? Maybe we'll make another batch. We'll see. It's again, the specialness of them may diminish if we make more, but it's all about, I guess, supply and demand.
Yeah, totally. I have some people asking for shirts and all too, and I've said, "Oh, I'm gonna do shirts this year," and I'm going almost 2 years doing the podcast now, and still haven't made any shirts. But maybe next year will be the year I do that. So,
So yeah, the name of the shop that my brother and I had where we met Mike back in '06 was called the Brooklyn Monster Factory.
mm-hmm.
And we had a cool logo, and we never made shirts for the shop, and we should have, because literally 2 weeks ago, someone at a show was talking to me going, "You guys should just make a shirt now for the shop." And I'm like, "Yeah." Should we?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, with that logo, people, it's a cool logo, and you should have made them back then. And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I says, part of me would honestly make something like that and just give them to the people who were part of the store and a part of our lives, and they're still a part of our lives now. Like, you know, like a cool kind of like giveaway kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and it was funny going back to like the horror rebirth era. That '06 to '10 is a part of that rebirth. Like we sold comic books, but we sold like horror magazines, and we sold horror T-shirts all the time, and
Mhm.
horror toys. And horror was as much a part of the shop as comic books were.
Right.
But what happened was the recession of 2009, 2010. It's kind of killed us, because if you're faced with spending money on groceries or whatever, or food or comic books, well, comic books are what's going to get cut.
Right.
And a lot of our customer base just kind of shrank. And it was, kind of sucked, but I mean, it was kind of out of our hands.
Hmm.
You know, we'd sold it to some customers of ours who kind of kept it going for a few years as a comic store as well, with a new name.
Hmm.
But they only lasted 3 years as opposed to our 4 years. So, it's hard to keep a business going.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, I'm the guy, like, when it comes to buying groceries or buying something entertainment wise, it usually deals with horror. I usually buy the entertainment stuff and eat ramen noodles, I guess.
Yeah, like I'm a fucking, yeah, I'm bad. But I'm like, I refer to myself, I'm the music industry's best friend. Like, I'll buy a CD and a vinyl and a shirt, like, of the band if I
Yeah.
could. And I like a lot of bands, so that's a lot of pieces of fucking merch. Um, but again, trying to hone it in on that, obviously, but still, like, the enthusiasm is there,
Yeah.
I would say, though, I have cut down on Blu-rays. Honestly, I have cut down on my Blu-ray buying, um, because of the overabundance of streaming services that I have, and honestly, the rampant availability of film right now. So,
Mhm.
mm,
Yeah, I'm right with you when it comes to the abundance of having streaming services, dude. I have like fucking 10 different ones, and I don't use these half the time, but when it's there, like, oh, there's a movie on there, I got to make sure I have that one. Like, my big go-tos are Shudder and Arrow Player. Those are my favorites when it comes to horror. They got the best shit ever. But besides that, I have like a bunch of other ones too, and it helps out with me not spending all my money on Blu-rays, but I still collect Blu-rays. Like, I tell myself, well, I'm not gonna buy any this month, and I end up buying like a whole damn box set. Like, I just did the whole Evil Dead box set of this like 4K Blu-ray thing they did from the TV series and the I think 2 or 3 films. So I have
uh,
all of those and stuff, and yeah, it's a bit of an addiction.
yeah. See, I'm there with like vinyl with that and CDs, but now I've actually kind of stopped quite a bit on the vinyl
Hmm.
and gotten back on the CD horse, because A, they're cheaper, and B, they sound better, and I bought a new CD player. So
That's
those
cool.
are my reasons.
Yeah, I think CDs are making a comeback. I really do. Like, it was vinyl for a while. Like, vinyl was big, especially when I was doing a Trip into Mechanism, my former band. Like, we sold a shit out of vinyls, but we hardly sold any damn CDs. But now it seems like it's the opposite with bands. Like, they're selling a shit ton of CDs and less vinyls.
Yeah, because the fans and the people out there who want to support music still want to support the band and still want a piece of the band, but $30, $35 for the vinyl isn't cutting it. 10 to
Hmm.
$15 for the CD is cutting it. So that's what's happening right now. It's the recession, honestly. The recession is helping CDs.
Yeah.
It's making perfect sense, because you're still supporting the band, you're getting the record, you're getting you know, you're being a part of the story, but you're not breaking the bank. That's
Right.
that's it. And also, to me, look, I came up honestly in the CD era. Um, and they definitely have the sound quality that, like, to me sounds the best to my ears, honestly.
Mhm.
It just does. However, vinyl is great. I love vinyl, but vinyl is about, to me, moods and kind of just holding that artwork and holding that record,
Mhm.
It's not so much about, like, I don't know. It's not easy access, that's for sure.
Nope.
Vinyl is uneasy access. Um, you can't take a record player on the subway to go to work.
Nope.
That's it.
Oh.
Um, and another piece of the puzzle, hopefully that this isn't boring, is that the recording you're hearing that the band did was done digitally,
Right.
and they using like analog tapes is super expensive, and almost no bands do it right now. Almost none. Some do. Very
Mhm.
few, though. Very few. So how they recorded that music, to me, is literally best heard via CD.
Right.
The way it was recorded, honestly. Some people will argue that point, but that's just, my 2 cents.
No, I
Um,
totally agree.
yeah, yeah. Unless your band, used a reel to reel, which you probably didn't. Um, that's why vinyl back in this, 60s, 70s, and 80s sounds so great, because that's how it was. It was recorded a certain way. You know,
Mhm.
it was almost recorded for vinyl and mixed and mastered for vinyl back then. They're doing that now, but if the reissue you buy doesn't have a sticker on it or any indication anywhere that says remastered for vinyl or
Mhm.
taken from the original tapes, then you literally just bought an overpriced vinyl that was made from a CD master, which is
Yeah.
right now. So yeah, it's a little rain on the parade right now for the vinyl craze, but it's the truth.
Yeah. I'm thinking this time next year, well, not this time next year, earlier than this next year, I'll probably do a CD release of my that new. I don't know if you checked it out yet. The new project I'm doing, Abraxas Horn. It's all like dark synth, weird
Oh
stuff.
yeah, it's very cool stuff. Awesome.
Yeah, there's a possibility I might do like a CD release of it. I'm just keeping it all to digital. I'm not doing all this craziness and stuff, like I said, with the vinyls and all that stuff. But since CDs are becoming more popular, it might be something I might consider next year. So then I'd be
Yeah,
cool.
and it's funny, you can make a CD as special as a vinyl release. You can have okay, we made 100 of these, we made 200 of these. That's it. They're never
Yep.
being put again on CD. Or you can number the CD. You can, like, there's tons of cool shit you can do with the CD format. You can say it was a special limited digipack. Some people just kind of forget that you can think outside the box with the CD just as much as you can with the vinyl and spend quite a bit less of, your money.
Oh yeah, totally,
Yeah,
totally.
this went to another conversation, but the only reason it did is because I am a musician and I am making music, and I'm in the midst of, having a release come out from an old band I did, so it's kind of been top of mind.
And speaking of that, going like kind of making another corner here. How was like horror inspired your music, like in your music making process, like the inspiration?
Um, it's been a huge inspiration. I mean, particularly on Inhuman, the band I've had since 1995. I've written lyrics that are completely inspired by horror films. A song called Bloodlust is inspired literally just by Argento, period. And there's a
Nice.
sample from Dario Argento's World of Horror at the beginning of that song. That's on our third record called The New Nightmare. Um, that's one of my favorite records. Like, I wrote a song about being a vampire in the modern world on that record.
Nice.
Like, it's hardcore, but it lyrically and spiritually, it comes from other places.
Hmm.
So yeah, that song is called Eternal, by the way. It's a New York hardcore song about a vampire.
Yes.
It totally is inspirational. Lyric wise, it just kind of depends. I mean, there's other projects that hopefully come to fruition this year, that are of the heavier spectrum, that to me would be very much drawing from horror and, darker subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, one would think that like hardcore music doesn't come from places like that, but to me, it kind of makes sense. It's a heavy music, and it's music that's supposedly real life inspired, and there's lots of horrific things in real life.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny on the first record. Let's see, have them like right in front of me. I'm like, you draw a blank about what some of the titles are, because
Oh
this
yeah.
record, like 25 years ago, or whatever. There's a song called "Crippled Inside," right? And I literally got that title while on my couch in like 1996 or 1997, and I was randomly watching the Friday the 13th TV series. That series that has nothing to do with Jason. It was just called Friday the 13th.
Oh yeah, and I loved it. I loved that shit growing up. It was so weird too, but yeah, totally.
And that title just kind of stuck with me.
Mm.
And I wrote it down, and I literally stole that from Friday the 13th TV series. And
Nice.
there's another song called Darker Than You Think, okay, from our third record.
Mm.
And I was riding subway, and there was an ad for a book. It was like a science fiction book ad, and it said Darker Than You Think. And I just pulled out a notepad and paper, and I wrote that down because I liked that title. Um, and it came from like what appeared to be it's something that was kind of sci-fi, but maybe sci-fi horror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because years ago on the subway, there would be just all these different types of ads for things, books, movies, and blah, blah, blah. They kind of don't do that as much now on the subway, but they did back in the, 90s and early O's.
Right.
Yeah, so I would say it's quite a big influence on me, sure.
That's cool, and yeah, I like that. Like like I said, with hardcore music, it's aggressive anyways, and it's heavy. Like it's cool. You're throwing in like some horror elements to it, so you're combining like two of your favorite things into one. It's pretty badass.
Yeah, no, totally, totally. I mean, there's definitely some other hardcore bands that have done it, and like I brought up Mortician earlier. They're like a death metal band whose whole basis is that every single song is basically about a different horror movie, or about horrific elements and things like that. And obviously, countless death metal bands have written songs based on horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
But Mortician is an example of a band whose like existence is horror movies,
Yeah, like everything they do is horror. So
Yeah. It's, Will Reimer's fucking great, and he, horror encyclopedia,
yeah, definitely. We did one of our last records we did with my band Tripping the Mechanism. We were like a doom, sludgy, blackened band. Little elements of everything. We used to get called like the black metal Melvin, so we're in that kind of genre, I guess. But we did an album called Dead Letters, and that pretty much the whole album was based on The Great and Secret Show by Clyde Barker.
Oh,
You remember
wow.
that?
I read that. Yeah, I read that when I was in high school.
Oh, dude, it's such an impact on me.
Oh no, not high school. If that came out in '92, I read that in junior college, I think. But that's fucking cool as shit, man. Wow. I mean, Clive Barker, I don't know. I feel like he gets kind of forgotten sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I feel like the fact that a new Hellraiser came out means that he is not forgotten. But
Right.
it would have been nice.
Yeah, Clyde Barker's like the best. So like, I'm glad the new Hellraiser is out, even though it wasn't very good. Are you there? Did I lose you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Are you good?
I got a phone call and I hung up the phone call, and then it stopped the Skype.
Oh, no problem, no problem. I'll make a note of that before I can edit it, so it's no thing.
Yeah, definitely edit it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to be like rambling and shit. So hopefully, that's not okay.
No, but yeah, Clyde Barker, man, like super underrated, I think, and hopefully he has another like a kind of a revolution of Clive Barker stuff, with the new Hellraiser film and stuff out.
Yeah, I didn't like it. And maybe part of the reason I didn't like it is because I don't think he had any involvement with it whatsoever.
Not really.
And it had none of his stamp on it to me. Like it had no Clive Barker, like it didn't have that like kind of sinister element. Like, I don't know. I know a lot of people enjoyed it. A lot of people enjoyed the hell out of it. I just thought it was okay. The Hellraiser 2022. I didn't like that. It was very like I couldn't see the Cenobites, and then when I could, I wished I couldn't because I didn't like how they looked. So,
Right.
She was great though. The head Hell Priest, Priest. She was great, but they did literally almost nothing with her. Like all this hype that it's going to be a female Pinhead, blah blah blah, and this and that, and then I feel like they gave her as minimal of a role as they could.
Yeah,
like
she's barely in it.
Yes. And the voice thing, it was like you couldn't hear her, and I just was like, this could have been thought out a little better. Like I don't know, and then how it, the victims of the box were just anybody at any time, and that's not how the box works. Like it's not how that's not how it's supposed to work, right? I mean, it's supposed to be drawing more shadier people, and like when Ashley Lawrence opened it, they didn't like. It was like a mistake, like they wanted Frank, they didn't want her,
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was just kind of a bit of a mess. And same for the Texas 2022. Like it had some nice moments. To me, the one thing that intrigued me about Texas 2022 was the very end when that post-credit sequence where it shows him heading to the old house. Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. It looks like it might set up a sequel possibly, but who knows what the ratings they got from this one, so I don't know.
Yeah, and come on, and if it's a true remake where it jumps from the 70s to now, everyone's fucking dead. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like Leatherface is a man in his 70s if they've aged him properly from then. And nobody's alive. He's going to an empty house unless they've done some voodoo,
Yeah, I don't see that working. The only highlight I had of that one was this Leatherface himself. I thought the guy that played Leatherface, I can't recall his name right now, and I'm not looking it up or whatever, just for whatever reason. But he was cool. It's just everything else, and the kills were pretty cool. But it just didn't feel like a Texas Chainsaw movie.
No, I agree. He was good. I did like him, and I liked the woman who played the modern Pinhead. They were both good. It's what they gave them. It's what they gave them to do, and the story that I didn't think was that great. So yeah, what are you gonna do? We talk a bit about that on the year-end wrap-up. Wait till you hear that.
Nice. Yeah, that's gonna be cool. I'll be listening to that. That'll be out probably this week. Not when this is out. My podcast episode's out, but we'll go back in time and it'll be coming out next week. So it's like a time warp thing.
Yes, exactly. Fucking funny. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything? You said you had some music stuff, some projects coming out. Anything you want to throw out there and stuff, like new stuff that that's gonna be coming out soon, or?
Yeah, it's new old stuff. My band I was in from 1994 called Confusion. We have our discography coming out. I would say by late spring, early summer, and it's 12 tracks. It's called Confusion, Storm the Walls, 1990-1994. It's going to be out on CD, digital, and vinyl. So that's cool. Putting that whole project together as we speak.
Nice.
As far as any kind of live performance or reunion gig from Confusion, I do not know. It's a maybe, but it's definitely not a yes right now. It's a maybe. I would love to, but we'll see what happens. As far as the other projects I have, Inhuman and The Last Stand, definitely will be playing out next year, but I don't anticipate any new music from either band, I don't think. But I honestly would like next year also to be the year that I do a brand new project. It's called Blessed Are the Sick.
Sweet.
It's going to be heavy as hell. Like it's going to be like, I guess, kind of death metal, but maybe death metal with a bit of a hardcore heart, you know?
Mhm.
It's just something I've had in my head for a while. I have like lyrics for it, and I have ideas and concepts, but I don't have the musicians for it. I have a name. I have, I have certain things, but I don't have the musicians yet, and I want to have them soon, and we'll see.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
I'm not. I mean, I'm a vocalist, and I can actually come up with riffs. I used to be a bass player. I was the bass player in Confusion, but
Mhm.
I am not currently a bass player. Like I couldn't. I don't know. It's just the idea of playing a show on bass would take some time and preparation. But Blessed Are the Sick, I will not be singing and playing bass. I'll just be singing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
So,
That's some
yeah.
good stuff to look forward to, man. You know, especially the heavier, darker stuff like you're about to be getting into. Hopefully, when you find some musicians, I'm totally down with that.
No, no. I mean, it's a long time coming. And it's like I'm putting it out into the atmosphere because now I have to fucking do it. It's just been in my head for too long, you know?
Yeah, you got to get that shit out for sure. You know, I know that feeling. That's like getting this album out this year with the synth stuff. It's like it's been in my head for too long. It needs to be out into the world. That way, you know, I can make more shit and like it helps drive you more. You know.
Yeah, like I've had that name, Blessed Are the Sick, for like 6 years. I'm not even kidding. Like I knew that was going to be the name of the project for years. And it's funny, I looked in like the metal encyclopedia and I've done Google searches, and the name is literally not taken. So yeah.
Well,
And
that's good. And hopefully from this podcast, nobody takes that name. Trademark right now. He's trademarking it, so don't fuck with that.
at least it's not taken by any current metal bands, you know, touring or making, you know, music or releasing music. So that's important.
That is good. Yeah, it's a great name too. It's catchy as fuck. So
Yeah, and it comes from my favorite Morbid Angel record. So, you know,
nice.
had to do it, and it has other significance too. So it's yeah, I'm excited for that to fucking happen, and I really hope it does happen, because if not, I sound like a fucking jerk talking about a band that doesn't exist. So there's that.
I'm sure it'd come true and stuff, and you get that rolling, and it'd be fucking awesome. So awesome.
Thank you for your time, and you know, hopefully I wasn't too fucking all over the place, but you know, I guess once I get rolling, I tend to just kind of talk about a bunch of different shit.
No, dude, this has been great, and it's been a long time coming, and yeah, this has been a fucking great talk. You know, we definitely got to do it again next year and stuff when things get rolling again. So
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, man. It's been great talking horror and music with you, Brandon. And you know, I'm very glad to have made your acquaintance, if not in person, but through the modern means. And thank you so much for, you know, supporting and the co-support.
oh hell yeah, and same to you, and maybe next year sometime we can all meet up. You know, see how
Yeah,
things go. It'd be fucking cool.
that would be great, brother. Have a great one, man. Take care.
Excellent. Have a good one.
Bye bye.